All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to Patriots First and Goal Preseason Edition. The NFL season is at last upon us. Kind of. It counts.
Kind of.
It's actual football, Richo. It's happening. The Patriots are playing the Panthers this week. It's not going to matter in the slightest, but it is still actual football. No more rambling on about off-season wants or needs. I'm real excited about it. How are you doing?
Good. I'm ready for some football to start. We talked about this on the last podcast where there's a lot of camp battles yet to be decided. And for us as fans, for us as evaluators, it's not the same watching practice for me as it is watching the actual games itself. I'm very much looking forward to being able to see them with their pads on the actual field. Who are the lineups? How are the coaches set up their depth charts? And are really like, this is our first game time sort of a deal. So Alec, I'm excited for real football to start.
No, I am. I'm probably more excited about this preseason than any preseason in years past. One, because as you mentioned, there's so many question marks at almost every position. So we're going to see a lot of experimentation, a lot of groupings, and some players are going to stand out. We'll get a lot of more of a sense of what the depth chart's going to look like after a game or two. And two, maybe a couple of preseason wins will be like one of like 4 wins we see all season with this team. So I'm going to celebrate the preseason wins if and when they happen, because they're going to be coming few and far between. But we're going to get to preseason in a bit, Rich. I think we start with first and goal with probably the biggest news at the moment. The rumors are swirling that Brandon Aiyuk is on his way out of San Francisco, and New England is one of the landing spots that is prognosticated. It is down to the Patriots and the Cleveland Browns, apparently. The Steelers are in the mix, I have heard, but it seems like it's the Browns or the Patriots. They both offered a second-round pick and a receiver, a second-rounder and Kendrick Bourne for the Patriots, a second-rounder and Amari Cooper for the Browns. Much more valuable draft pick from New England, much more valuable receiver from Cleveland. And I don't know if this is true, Rich, but the rumor has it that Aiyuk has a lot of creative say over where he goes, which – if I'm Cleveland, I'd probably take Amari Cooper, a proven commodity, over a second-round pick that's going to be probably top 35, top 40 pick. But if Aiyuk has the decision-making power, Pats want to pay him a lot of money, so we could have a new receiver pretty soon.
Would you want to be in Boston or Cleveland, Alec?
Yeah.
It's a pretty good favor right there. I mean, honestly, it's one where Aiyuk is much better than Calvin Ridley. You know, how the Patriots were all in. They didn't get him during the offseason. I like Aiyuk more. We've talked about him a little bit this offseason. I still don't know if he's worth top 5 money, which is apparently what the Patriots are willing to pay him. I think he's good. He's been the 4th option for the 49ers, the 4th option in that offense. So he's produced, but how would he do as a number 1? Not sure how I feel about it. But to me, just reminds me a lot of remember like the Celtics with Danny Ainge, when every single time a big player was available, they'd be like, is Danny Ainge going to make the trade? Is he going to give up the war chest of 5 first-round picks for such and such a star player? And the Patriots or the Celtics would always be in the running. Durant, a bunch of other players that they were in the running for, or even in like from a trade conversation, it'd always be the Celtics and someone else. And the players would always go somewhere else. And I feel like the Red Sox do this as well. It would happen under Belichick a lot, where the Patriots would always be thrown in as the other team to help jack up the prices of the trade. And for me, what I am waiting for is for Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf to make this feel like the Brad Stevens era of the Celtics, where you just go, oh, they actually did it. You know, when they bring in those star players where you're like, oh, that would have been a great fit, but you know, they're not actually going to pull it through. If they do this, if they get Drake May, his wide receiver, his premier wide receiver target, Aiyuk obviously makes the wide receiver room so much better. I would just be waiting to see what this team has in store, because they have so much money to spend.
Yeah, I mean, the cap space is really what does it for me. I mean, it's like they have it, so why not spend it kind of thing. But I've been thinking about this all day, Rich. And I really, it's weird. I don't have a really strong opinion one way or another about this move. If I were to wake up tomorrow and found out he went to Cleveland, I wouldn't be heartbroken. If I found out he got to New England, I wouldn't be jubilant. It's like, I think it's a good move, But your point about him being the fourth option in the offense is a good one. I just don't want to be one of those teams that just chases Mike Glennon and Nat Flynn and those guys that have like the good off season, but like they're not really, they're worth way less than they get just due to the temperature of the market. The Patriots have never won a Super Bowl with an elite number one big money wide receiver. They've never done it. A lot of teams haven't. It's not like a number one receiver is the magic ingredient to being this contender. There are enough holes elsewhere where maybe they could go and sign some more people or roll it into next year, whatever the case may be. I think it's a good move. I'd be happy about it, but this isn't a trade where I am like refreshing Twitter constantly, hoping to find some news that he's coming. I think either way, it'll work out for the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's also one of those situations where I'd still rather CD Lamb. You know, he's holding out with the Cowboys. They put him on like the non-report list or something like that recently. He wants a new contract. If I'm the Patriots, CD Lamb's a better receiver. You know, we're talking about from a production standpoint, Lamb has been better than Aiyuk. And then also from a doing it as the number one versus the number 4, right? And I'm going to keep coming back to that because behind McCaffrey, behind Kittle, behind Debo, you got Aiyuk. And then CeeDee Lamb is the guy in Dallas. I'd rather bring him over. And so it's one of those scenarios where if the Steelers win it, if the Browns win it, and then that leaves the Patriots with one less piece of competition to get a player like CeeDee Lamb, that's who I'd go for. That I would not regret them not getting Aiyuk if they go ahead and get CeeDee Lamb and pay him top 5 money. Same money, I'd give it to Lamb every day.
I would too, because CeeDee Lamb is the legit number one receiver in Dallas, and he's proven to be that. Again, I think we had this on our conversation on our last podcast, Rich. He's got Debo, he's got George Kittle, he's got Christian McCaffrey. He's got a lot of weapons inside that offensive system in 49ers, and can he be the only real offensive weapon in an offensive unit? I just don't know if he's got those chops. I do like the aggressiveness. I do like the fact that the Patriots are making these moves. It's cool. Maybe they think they're closer than we do in terms of being a contender. Maybe they think that they have a shot to make some noise in 2024. I personally don't see it. Maybe they're seeing things inside the walls at one Patriot Place at Gillette Stadium that's going to make us think that, wow, they're like a 10-win team. Again, seems a little optimistic to me. But I think Gerard Mayo is kind of putting his stamp and his marker on this roster going forward. And I'm here for it. It's kind of nice to have some transparency. It's kind of nice to never know what's going on behind closed doors. As somebody who's an amateur kind of reporter for the Patriots, it makes my job a little bit easier. But I don't know anything, and I'm happy to kind of sit back and let this kind of play out.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what we're here for. Honestly, also, I can imagine the 49ers would want to make some sort of a move prior to the season if part of the trade, and that seems to be an important part, is that they get a player in return. It seems like that's what they're looking for with every team that they trade. So they don't want it to be a mid-season, let's now all of a sudden get Amari Cooper ramped up into our offense kind of a situation. They have some sort of a push to get it done as soon as possible as well. So I don't think we'll have to wait that much longer to figure out where he's going to land. But again, to your point, if it's the Patriots, cool. If not, all right. It doesn't really faze me either way. I don't think he's going to be the difference for them this year, honestly. And would he be the difference like 3 years from now? Potentially. But I also feel like he's not as big of a name that it would make me just really turn on my computer and be like, oh, Justin Jefferson, what?
Yeah. However, I'd be remiss as we close out first down if I didn't ask you, Rich Hill, the receiver that'd be leaving New England is your boy.
I know.
Kendrick Bourne. It would be Aiyuk for Kendrick Bourne. That would be the trade. I mean, you're one of the biggest Kendrick Bourne stands on the planet. And how do you feel about him departing back to his old home in 49er land?
Hey, if you love him, set him free. That's how I feel. There could not be a better situation than Kendrick Bourne getting a homecoming to the 49ers in that Shanahan offense, knowing now what he's capable of. If he's that fourth option in there, he's going to be 1,000-yard receiver, and I couldn't be happier for him. He's got it. He's got the chops. I mean, also, I think they got Ricky Purcell as like the rookie for them. They got a lot of talent on the 49ers. I don't know if Bourne would really be at the top of that depth chart, but it is one where you couldn't ask for a better landing spot. And then ultimately, like, if they're back in the Super Bowl and Bourne ends up winning it this year, I'd be like, hey, very happy that you got your ring.
It's very mature of you, Rich Hill. I
Thank
don't know
you.
if I'd be able to handle that kind of level of maturity. I better move on before I embarrass myself further. Let's go to the people that are definitely on the team now, Rich Hill. Second and goal, Patriots training camp. We've got a couple of full padded practices. The intensity is ramping up. We're seeing a little bit of emergence of the first team. We're seeing Jacoby Brissett start to pull away, it seems like, in the quarterback quote-unquote battle. That's pretty well ensconced there. Anything particular you've noticed these past couple of days of practice that stood out to you, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is kind of solidifying, even though no one's really standing out, is the offensive line. Patriots put Jake Andrews, so their 4th-round pick from last year, on the injured reserve. And that opens it up for Nick Leverett, who was one of the off-season practice players for the Patriots, won an award for being a practice player. He's been the one that stepped up when David Andrews was practicing earlier in this camp. So we're starting to get a little bit of an understanding of just at least who the pieces are, maybe not necessarily the order of them, but you're going to have David Andrews and Nick Leverett as your top 2 centers. You're going to have Mafi, Layden Robinson, Sidney Sow, and Cole Strange, depending on health, as your 4 guards / interior players. And then on your tackle spots, you got Chucks, you got Onwenu, you got Caden Wallace, and then probably Calvin Anderson and Vidarian Lowe. They got some options on that end. But what we're seeing is this offensive line, we know what the pieces are. And that sets us up for an understanding of, during the preseason, who's the best. I don't think that they've fully settled on it. They're still trying to figure out where Caden Wallace fall in, left side, right side, Chuck's left side, right side. And, do you put Onwenu at tackle or at guard? They have a lot of flexibility when it comes to that. And so I'm curious to see where they land, but at least we know what colors they're painting with.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the big things I'm going to watch. We're talking about it on third down, just, how many different formations of offensive line we see in the coming weeks when the actual action starts. It's still so up in the air in so many ways. Guys coming back from injury, there's still not really a lot of solidity along the interior of the line. I still have no clue what's going to happen with Cole Strange. David Andrews really is that only stalwart we have so far. So that offensive line is going to be a really, really fun thing to watch. To that end, and kind of they're a little bit related, Antonio Gibson, the number 2 running back in New England, is also seeing a lot of reps as a kick returner. He's a kick return specialist, so it makes sense. He's splitting reps with Jalen Reagor. That's a very interesting kind of sneaky under-the-radar battle, who the kick returner is going to be. Because I don't know if you watched the Hall of Fame game, Rich Hill, but the new kickoff is kind of wild. And
I like it.
I like it too. I mean, it's going to take a little getting used to. It's like a weird, I feel like I'm playing Tecmo Bowl or something for NES. I'm aging myself here, but unlike years past where the kickoff is basically just a glorified touchback where you're just starting at 25, I think 6 of the 8 were returned or something along those lines. So return specialists is now actually going to once again have some relevance in the NFL. So I think the Jalen Reagor versus Antonio Gibson battle should be an interesting one, because I feel like Reagor, I don't know if he's on the outside looking in the receiver room right now, but he might be. It's definitely possible, depending on how things shake out with the Aiyuk trade and who emerges and whatnot. But, we always talked about how the way onto this team for a lot of players is via special teams. And Reagor could find himself as solidified as a returner. But I like Gibson, the return spot. The only issue for me as a returner, I don't know if I'd want to waste Gibson's talents. Not talents. I don't want to waste him as a returner if Reagor is able to take the spot, because the other area I want to talk about is that running back room. It's Ramondre Stevenson, probably Gibson as number 2 or like the 3rd down back. But Kevin Harris isn't looking great so far. He had a couple of drops on a pass. He had a fumble on a wet kind of ball. They're doing some practice with some messy conditions. Hasn't looked great. And you can't just give the ball to Mondre 40 times a game, every game. So how the backfield shakes out beyond that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so when you think of the returners, I also want to throw Isaiah Bolden into it. He was like the FBS college football #1 ranked kick returner when he was coming out of Jacksonville State. So someone to watch on that one, especially to your point. You got to be a special teams player to make the roster, and that's Reagor's only path, is being the best return man or the best gunner, whatever it is, because he's not going to make it at that wide receiver role just based off of the players around him. But that is a very fair question as it relates to the running back room, because who is it? I mean, obviously, running backs have been devalued across the league. if I were, running a fantasy team, I would pick Ramondre Stevenson in the first round, no question. I wouldn't be shocked if at the end of the year he had like 1,500 yards and 15 scores because they have no other options. Like, I like JaMychal Hasty as a prospect, but he's not a bell cow. He hasn't really been that proven on it. And I like Gibson as well. He's going to be the number 2, but like, there's not a lot of depth on that one. What the Patriots will likely be doing is watching the cutting room floor of these other teams that might have a viable third running back that can both run and catch the ball in a way that Kevin Harris has not shown that he can do, in a way that JaMychal Hasty is your floor. If this player is better than JaMychal Hasty, cool. That's an upgrade. If not, Hasty's a player that, you can put out there. He'll probably get 3.5 yards a carry. He might, be able to do some C grade blocking and some C grade receiving. And like, that's fine. He's your third receiver, but it's one where you'd like to have a little bit more, and one that when you're thinking within the context of kick returns, I wouldn't want Gibson out there. I don't want a kick return, even under these new rules, to be the difference between us having one running back and 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you don't want a thin position, especially if you have a shoddy offensive line, receivers that aren't really scaring anybody, a serviceable, decent quarterback who's not blowing the doors off anybody in Brissett. If you're going to be productive, it's going to be on the ground. And if your number 2 guy who's supposed to spell your number 1 guy gets blown up in a kickoff return gone bad, where do you go from there? Maybe Terrell Jennings is going to be the preseason darling we all hope he's going to be. I don't know, but it's a pretty shallow. I think there's only like 5 running backs on the roster right now, which isn't a very, very deep room. And one of them's locked in. The rest are all kind of, I think Gibson's a lock too. So, but the other 3, who knows? Hopefully Kevin Harris can kind of bounce back. He's a big dude. He's like 5'10", 230. He's like that big bruiser. I think he's got potential to be, but I'm not overly impressed with what I've seen with him so far. I have to say though, Rich Hill, I'm not making the assumption you think I'm making. I'm just once again stating an objective fact that Tyquan Thornton has continued to look very, very solid in the reps he's given. He's nursing an injury, not 100%. I'm just saying, I'm not making any kind of claim he's going to make the team, that he's the number 1 receiver, that he's going to finally have a breakout year. I am making none of those claims. I am simply stating he's probably having the best training camp he's had as a pro. I'm just making an objective statement.
So you heard it here first, folks. Alex Shane, Tyquan Thornton's Hall of Fame career path starts this year. I mean, honestly, you see this Patriots roster. Is he gonna make it? I mean, if they trade Kendrick Bourne to get Aiyuk, all right, who's on the roster? You got Aiyuk, Demario Douglas on the inside. You got Polk. You got Javon Baker. Those are your 4 locks. Is he going to beat out KJ Osborne? It really comes down to what is the skill set. If Tyquan Thornton was a returner, and with his speed, obviously he's got more of a stride than quick pitter patter. If he had that, I'd be like, maybe he can beat Rieger. But it's one of those situations where, is he a one-trick pony, and is he good enough at that trick? If he earns the roster spot, cool. I'd love for them to have a receiver with the wheels that they have, and maybe this will be a friendly enough offense that allows him to do it. To his credit, he caught a touchdown in practice against Christian Gonzalez, the only touchdown that the offense was able to put together on that a couple days ago. So he's doing something, which is better than nothing. But until we see something during the preseason, I'm still not even going to consider putting him on the roster.
Again, I didn't say he's going to make the roster.
I'm just saying, Alec,
he's having a good training camp. And I think the good thing is he's going to have, I will say, if he ends up not making it come the end of this month, it will not be through lack of opportunity. I think he's going to have every possible chance to do something spectacular over the next couple of games, next couple of weeks, to work his way in there. Obviously, you're right. A lot will depend on if Aiyuk comes to the Patriots or not. There might be a spot for him one way or another, but I think he's done what he can so far, and it will not be through lack of opportunity. You mentioned Christian Gonzalez. I've heard not very much out of Gonzalez, which I'm taking as a big positive. I think he's kind of just back from his injury, doing what he's going to do. I'm hoping he continue to showcase what he showcased his first couple weeks of last year, lock things up. Are you feeling better, worse, or the same than last week, Rich, about the secondary, based on what you've seen so far?
Oh, I feel great about the secondary. It's one where I'm not going to live and breathe practice to practice on them. They have the talent. Obviously, you don't like to see Jonathan Jones getting dinged up. He went off with the trainers, so hopefully he'll be okay. But I don't think we've had any negatives out there. I think, in fact, we've started to see some other players emerge a little bit. Alex Austin's looking a little bit more comfortable out there. Probably going to be penciled in as the starting cornerback opposite of Gonzalez with Jones in the slot. So you have some good depth now, and I really like that. But to add to it, Del Pettis, free safety, undrafted rookie, has looked good. So if we're also talking about who has a path to the roster, Patriots don't have a free safety in the way that they want. Like, obviously, Jalen Hawkins, they brought in, can play that as like the Deron Harmon-esque, but that's an open role. It's one where you got Peppers and you got Duggar. Those are two players that are better off either in the box or at least like closer to the line of scrimmage. They're not deep safeties. And so if we're able to see Pettis, if we're able to see some of these other young players stand out at that free deep safety role, then that's their path to the roster on defense. And if they're able to perform on special teams, then they have a very clear path to make the roster.
They do. Again, I think that safety position is really interesting because they're just so similar in how they play, Peppers and Duggar. It'd be good to see somebody emerge. You never know, Rich. Maybe Brendan Schooler is going to blow us all away with his safety build. He's technically a safety. I don't see him playing anything besides special teams, but you never know. You just never know. But yeah, I'm all for that. I think it's always good when you get a rookie opportunity, and Del Pettis. Every year, there's some undrafted guy that comes in and does some good things. So maybe he's going to be the guy. Another guy I want to talk about before we move on to the actual game that's had a really good opportunity to step up, and he's done it, is Anthony Jennings. I think given Christian Barmore's status, given Matthew Judon's uncertain status, even though he has returned to practice, maybe talks are progressing positively, he's still a big question mark. They're using him as a primary edge setter, run game on the roster. He can be a 3-down defender, and I'm glad to see him take advantage of the chance he's gotten and deliver.
Oh, totally. I mean, I love Jennings. I talked about this at back in March, where in a couple years, I think we're going to all look back at him like Rob Ninkovich, where he's just like, you're very consistent, 8-sack, very good against the run, one of the best in the league against the run, can drop into coverage, can do it all, reliable player on the outside. I don't think he's ever going to be a double-digit sack player, but he's one of those players that wins championships. He's one of those players that you orient your defense around with their flexibility, with their versatility, with their consistency. And that's something that I feel like should be applauded. And honestly, I think that Jennings is a very good player. I like that they gave him the extension over Uche, because I think Uche is boom bust, and would obviously love to have him have a boom year kind of a situation. But Jennings is the player that in my head is definitely worth investing in. And I love that he's really rising to the occasion.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think this defense is doing what it has to do, given the limitations for injuries and contract disputes. The fact the guys can step up, I think, bodes well for this team. Again, it's exciting stuff, man. Again, it's an interesting deviation from our usual conversation. We're like, man, I can't wait to see whether Ryan Mallett or Kevin O'Connor is going to win the backup quarterback job, because that was pretty much like the main conversation for these preseason. Now it's kind of like pretty much anything goes for every position. And we're going to see it all for the first time against the Carolina Panthers on Thursday night at 7 o'clock. We're going to break down that game a little bit after this.
Hey guys, Alex Shane from Patriots First and Goal here, and I cannot wait to tell you all about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's also the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, because unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. On Prize Picks, you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. That means you can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has you covered every single week. From lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to helping your lineup hit or getting your entry fees back if you're losing lineup on Fridays, Prize Picks has it all. Football season's almost here, college and pro, and Prize Picks is where you want to be to place all your bets. You want Patrick Mahomes to throw for more than 300 yards? You want to see more than 45 points scored in Michigan versus Ohio State? Prize Picks has you covered. I made my first $10 deposit, and I received an instant bonus of $10. That means if you have the skills, you can play for a shot at turning your $10 into $1,000. Just download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
All right, we are back with third and goal. Week 1 of the preseason. The Carolina Panthers are traveling to Gillette Stadium to take on the Patriots Thursday evening, 7 p.m. on NFL Network. So we'll be able to watch the game, those of us outside of the local broadcast. I'm hoping it's Scott Zolak. I don't imagine it will be. I imagine somebody besides Zolak will be the NFL Network. He's just such a riot to listen to. He's like everyone's drunk uncle at the barbecue that you don't want to talk to, but you kind of have to. Obviously, the game's not going to matter from a score perspective. It'll be good to see a win because, like I said earlier in the podcast, it may be one of like 4 wins we get all season. But the score doesn't matter. It's what performance on the field matters, who delivers, who doesn't, who stands out, who doesn't. Let's start with the offense, Rich. Third and goal, Patriots offense. I'm not going to say Patriots offense versus Carolina defense because no one game plans for this stuff. But what are you looking to see on the field from an offensive perspective that you're going to pay particular attention to on Thursday night?
Competency. Is that asking for too much? A plan? A strategy that doesn't make you scratch your head. I'm obviously shell-shocked still from the Matt Patricia years and then just confounded by the Bill O'Brien year where with Matt Patricia, you remember when like the offenses just like didn't make sense. Like the routes didn't match up with the drop backs, like the number of steps, the receivers were not into their routes at the top of the drop. It was an incoherent offense with Matt Patricia. So if we see an offense that have plays drawn up for rhythm, that have drawn up for structure, that build off of each other, I will be very excited for that. And the challenge that we always had with the Bill O'Brien offense is that everyone just underperformed. Either it was overly complex or they oversimplified it to the point of just hamstringing all the players from their strengths. They just didn't play to what they were actually capable of. And so, one, if we have a cohesive offensive playbook with plays that make sense, and 2, if we have an offense tailored around the players and their strengths and their abilities, that's all I'm going to ask for. I don't need them to produce. I just want to have a process that I can trust in a way that we haven't had since Josh McDaniels. Even then that rookie year with Mac Jones, I felt like that was unnecessarily restrictive as well. So I want to have an offense that I feel like I can put my brain behind in support as opposed to just another year of just like, what are we doing?
Really setting the bar high, Rich Hill. Just like play.
I don't need a player to do anything. I don't need a player to perform.
You just want to play that makes sense. So in a preseason game where they keep it very vanilla and don't do any game planning, all you want to see are just like plays that are run in a sensical manner is what you're looking for.
And like, again, I don't want it to be like, this is the most intricate, well-designed, like surprising play or anything like that. It's just like one where it's like, look, they got their zone blocking down. Cool. That looks promising. Oh, look, they've gotten their tight ends involved. Great. I like that. Oh, cool. I see how these routes worked with each other and not against each other. Cool. I don't care if they catch the ball, but at least it makes sense. That's all I'm looking for. It doesn't have to be super advanced.
Well, I have to say I can't give you too much crap here because I'm not looking for much more than that. I don't think there's really a whole lot we'll be able to glean from so many of the positional groupings because it's so much shakeup in terms of the starters, who's second on the depth chart. But I do think the 5 offensive linemen they trot out first quarter, first snap will at least be somewhat indicative of what they're thinking for the starting 5 in September. Yep. Whoever the 5 is, whatever order comes out in, I'll be very curious to see what that is. I imagine come the second quarter, they'll start screwing guys around and making guys different positions. And third and fourth quarter, you'll see a lot of the backups in. But I think the first like drive or 2 offensive linemen will be not very telling, but at least give me a much more solid sense of where they're probably leaning along the offensive side of the ball. Because, again, we've talked about this. We don't know for sure beyond David Andrews who's going to be ending up where. We know Onwenu is going to start probably right tackle, maybe right guard. We don't know. Cole Strange will probably come back in left guard, but maybe not. Sidney Sow is there, Antonio. So there's a lot of question marks. But I think that first drive, the lineup that we have there might be their order to lose. So I'll be looking for that. I'm not looking for which receiver comes out first. I'm not looking for the running back schemes. I just want to see who is on the offensive line and whether they operate out of a number of 2 tight end sets. I know we're both pretty excited about Hunter Henry, and I know we're also both pretty excited about the guy that brought from Cleveland, Austin Hooper. I think that's a good, solid, classic Patriots signing, and I think he can be utilized well. I don't need to see a lot of creativity out of him, but like a good offensive line that makes sense and a couple of 2 tight end sets, I'll be happy on Thursday.
Totally. I mean, especially a player that played in Van Pelt's offense before, just to have someone that knows what they're doing, be able to show up in a way that seems productive. That's cool. Again, I don't need him to get 100 yards in a preseason game. That doesn't matter. But would like to have some sort of a semblance of like, oh, okay, this is one of the plays that they have in there. Okay, cool. Very much also agreed. Want to see what happens on the offensive line. That's very much going to be a very real question. My counter to you, or my question is, you mentioned earlier, there's always some player, the Zach Sudfeld, the DJ Foster, that goes off during the preseason that gives you a 100-yard game, whether it's total yards or either rushing or receiving. They go for 100 yards, and everyone loves them. Who's going to do it this game for the Patriots?
This game, I think this game is going to, I kind of hinted at it earlier in the podcast. I think Terrell Jennings is going to get a decent amount of snaps. I can see him busting one. I don't think the Panthers are going to be playing any of their starters. I think there was hinted at there going to be literally no starters playing at any point, which leaves the gaps wide open for Terrell Jennings to bust one out. And I think also running back, like we talked about already, is one of those positions. Like that number 3 spot is so wide open. Yeah. And I feel like when for a fact you're not fighting for like special team slot or maybe the last receiver in the receiving room, there's going to be 3 or 4 formations in the entire playbook where you come on the field. That running back 3 is going to be a legitimate contributor to this team. Totally. And I think it's going to motivate guys a little bit more. Kevin Harris is currently the incumbent, but his spot's up for grabs. So let's see Terrell Jennings come in, all 6 feet, 220 pounds of him, and rumble his way for like 75 yards and 2 scores would be great for him.
2 scores.
That's scores.
Setting off the scoreboard relative to last year. I mean, that would be cool. That'd be very, very cool. I would love to see someone show up in that way. I feel like Patriots are I feel like they're going to go run heavy. Wouldn't be surprised by that. It's the preseason, just trying to get their block set up, trying to figure out who their offensive line is. I also think that we could see a wide receiver go for it. I don't know which one. Like, could it be Tyquan Thornton? I would be cackling if it was Tyquan Thornton that just lit up the Panthers on this one. But what I would kind of think might be like a Javon Baker, because I don't think that they're going to play their starters for that long, but he's someone who has been standing out, has had like some rough practices here and there, but in general, he's been standing out. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's out there getting some good reps with whichever quarterback is throwing it to him, because I think that he's good enough that he's going to get reps with the ones, but he's not good enough that he gets to sit out and he'll still have to play with the 2s. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he has something like 4 catches for 100 yards and a score.
Tell you, I feel like every single throw to a receiver is going to be a crucial one, because that receiver room is so jam-packed that if you only get like 2 passes a game, you better haul both of them in. And so that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Although I will say, I'm going to keep harping on this. I started last week. I'll continue to do it right now. I need to see it on offense at some point. A Joe Milton to Tyquan Thornton go route. I don't care when it happens. This is a prime time to do it. It's 4th quarter, 2 minutes left. Why not? And if Tyquan Thornton only has like 2 catches for like 87 yards in a TD, but one of them's a 60-yard bomb from Milton, I will take it. That'll make me very, very happy. As long as it happens at some point this preseason before one or both of them get cut, I'll consider the whole month of August a total success for me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and also we need to remember I don't think the Patriots really play that many of their starters on this one. So it'll also be indicative of like who does suit up. Because I think it was Bailey Zappi that was the top quarterback last year. And then they played a little bit of Mac Jones in week 2. And so whoever comes out is really just showing us who their second strings are, which again, totally fine. But I'd be curious to see if they can beat the 9 points that they put up in week 1 last year.
To that end, Rich, do you think Drake May sees extended time at all, get him some reps on the NFL position, or think they just kind of bubble wrap him?
Honestly, it's a fair question because he's clearly the number 2 quarterback. So it would make sense for him to start and probably play the entire first half. And then they'd give, the third quarter to Joe Milton, give the fourth quarter to Zappi. That would make sense. Is it a situation where they don't feel a need to do that, though? And then say, Joe Milton, you get the first half, and then Zappi, you get the second half? Because Zappi's the QB4. I don't know if they need to see anything more from him. I have a hard time seeing a path for him to the roster at this point. So is it worth giving him any snaps? Or even did you just say, Drake May, you get the first half, and then Milton, you get the second half? I would expect him to at least get a quarter. I don't know if he'd get that much more just because he's so valuable to the franchise.
Well, for the sake of just the Boston media panic machine, I'd like to see him not play at all, because if he comes out and doesn't look that good, it's going to be overdrive in what a waste of a draft pick he was and how Mayo's already screwed the franchise for the next 5 years.
Yep.
Don't need that in my life. But yeah, I mean, it should be fun. Again, just like watching people come out there and do their thing, seeing 3 guys all wearing number 33 at various positions is always really fun. The whole who the hell is that guy game. I enjoy the first preseason week more than I should probably. Maybe because I'm so football starved. But secondly, it's just like it's the hope and the excitement and guys really fighting to live out their dream is pretty cool. 4th and goal, Rich. Let's move on. Other side of the ball, defensive side of the ball. I think it's already been established that Bryce Young's not going to start at all for the Panthers. So we're not going to see him out there. So maybe Sam Darnold is nursing an injury as well. So I don't even know who's going to be.
It's Andy Dalton is the actual complete below mid-tier replacement quarterback. Darnold is now, I think he's the starter for the Vikings these days.
Yikes. I lost track of the D's. But whoever is out there, Andy Dalton or whoever the third stringer for the Carolina Panthers is.
Do you want to feel really old? Jack Plummer.
Not Jake Plummer.
No, Jack Plummer. So it's just a throwback name for it for Jake the Snake, but Jack
the Snake
Plummer
for the Cardinals. Anyway, I'm rambling as usual, Rich Hill. The point is we're probably not going to see a robust Carolina Panthers offense out there on Thursday night, which means if the Patriots shut them down, it's not that big of a deal. So what in particular are you looking for that you can take away from the defensive performance, regardless of how incompetent the Panthers offense might be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to look too much for this Patriots defense to look great. Again, it's going to be all of the backups. It's going to be a more interesting game to understand, like, who stands where, who doesn't play because they're a lock already. Like, do they give Christian Gonzalez some time to get some rest off? He played in the first preseason game last year, but it's his rookie year. Doesn't get to avoid that. But in general, most of the players that are going to make the roster that are locks aren't going to play. So for me, what I'll be looking for is who is lining up and where. We've had that question. Christian Barmore with his blood clots. What's going to happen on that front? Judon is, still holding out, so we're not expecting him to play. There's going to be a trickle up effect. We know that Jennings and Uche, we know that Keon White, who's been looking great all offseason, and Dietrich Wise, they're all locks to make the roster. Do they make any of them play? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they go O'Shea and Jimenez like most of the times out there because they can afford to. And so I'd be curious to see who doesn't play, because that really, when you look at the overall roster composition, knowing who's a lock really just shows you, okay, actually, before you even see the first snap, just based off of who's active, we know how many roster spots are likely going to go to the remaining players on defense that are taking the field.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see Christian Gonzalez play maybe a drive or two just to get back out there. I'm okay with that. But the real positional grouping I'm looking for, we talked about it a bit on on second down, is just the safety position. I think there's a lot that can be done at safety. Kyle Duggar, Jarrell Peppers, sure, we all know what they're capable of. But Marte Mapu, we've talked about. Love to see what they can do with him. Jalen Hawkins, obviously. Del Pez, we talked about. Josh Bledsoe is more of the special teamer, but maybe he can find a spot. So the back half of the secondary, I think, is going to be a really fun group to watch in terms of how they track guys out there, what packages they use. Are they doing a lot of cover one with one safety? They're going to do a lot of cover two with two safeties. They're like a 3 safety package they're going to play with. It should be pretty cool. I think we're pretty locked in for our outside cornerbacks and our slot cornerbacks, but I really want to see what they do with that safety room. I also feel like there's 1 or 2 guys that are going to stand out and really make a name for themselves, not only the special teams, but as part of that secondary contributing factor. So I think that's a wide open one, and that should be pretty fun.
Totally. And like Bill Belichick would always say this, that like, whenever they played the Colts when they were like winless or something like that, and he was like, people are like, can you actually learn anything from these games where you're going to absolutely just annihilate the other team? And he was like, you think that I can't learn something about my team watching them compete against Dwight Freeney? You think I can't learn something about them going against Robert Mathis, like these 2 Hall of Fame level pass rushers? Like, maybe not everyone, maybe not competitive from a game sense, but you can still learn stuff. And I think when you look at this Panthers team, I don't think, obviously, they were the worst team in the league last year, which is saying something because we watched the Patriots. They have talent, and they've added talent to the roster. Like, they brought in Deontay Johnson over from the Steelers. They drafted Xavier Legette, who's someone that the Patriots really liked and wanted. They have Adam Thielen out there as well. So they have talented wide receivers from a physical standpoint, from a route running savviness, and, just like a wiggle perspective. There's not like obviously they have straight line speed players like Terrence Marshall, but from a who's going to be taking the field, they have those Stevie Johnson-esque, can shake you out of your defense kind of receivers. So the Patriots secondary will have their hands full, even if they don't necessarily have someone who can deliver them the ball. Although that said, Andy Dalton, maybe a bottom tier starter, still better than most. Then you look at that tight end spot, old friend Jacob Hollister, and then also old friend Jordan Matthews, 2 players. Matthews has converted from wide receiver to tight end. This is a team that, like, again, no, not a lot of world beaters on it, but you can learn what you have. And so how the Patriots match up against these players is definitely what I'll be paying attention to. And then we can also talk about the running backs, because I wouldn't be surprised if one of them wound up on the Patriots.
Yeah, no, for sure. Last thing I'll ask, Rich, as we wrap this up here and get to predictions. One of the more, I don't know if this is an interesting battle. It's kind of a sad battle, because if you have 2, you have none. But Chad Ryland and Joey Sly are both in contention for the kicking position. They both went, I think, 3 of 4 in this last training camp preseason practice. So it's not like one is wildly standing out over another. I would imagine both of them would get a couple of reps for some extra points, hopefully, or field goals or kickoffs or whatever the case may be. Is there one guy in particular you're leaning forward to this point, or are you kind of indifferent as to who makes, as long as they're accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Ryland gets the nod so long as he doesn't fall apart. And when you look at how he's been doing at camp thus far, he's actually been outperforming Joey Sly. He has the bigger leg. He's actually been more accurate on his kicks. And so he has the inside lane. It's his role to lose. And obviously, he had a very, 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 very terrible, awful, no good, very bad first season with the Patriots, right? I think he converted only like 64% of his field goals. But it's one where, I don't know, he only has up to go. And there's so much variance at that position that we've seen teams over the years give up on a kicker because, they have a bad year and they bring in someone else, and then they go show up somewhere else and have a 10-year stretch. Like Nick Folk was great for the Patriots, obviously different stages of their career. He was able to do it a lot more before Ryland, but you've seen these kickers. Was that Gostkowski converted like 75% of his kicks his rookie year? It's different. Players can settle in. Maybe it'll feel good that he's won it, and then he'll kick 80% this year and no one will remember how bad his rookie year was. I'm not rooting against him. I have no reason to think that he won't be able to just keep it together during the preseason, but he's been earning it so far, which is great, and it's his to lose.
It is his to lose. I said it before. I'll say it again. I love the name Joey Sly. It's just a cool name, but I really don't care as long as you're kicking extra points and making field goals, because the number of ones that were shanked wide last season I have lost track of. Hopefully it won't be the case this week or this year. And with that, that's all I got, Rich. Anything else you want to talk about, or time for predictions?
Well, let's move on to predictions.
All right. Clearly important stuff here.
Truly.
As always, we predict every single game from preseason all the way through the end of the year. I keep track, and the loser buys the winner a beer. I don't think we've ever actually either of us cashed in on that beer we're supposed to have bought, but I like the hypothetical tab is being run. I think
I owe you 3 beers.
I'll have to go back and check, but I think we've been doing this for like 10 years now. I think it's like 6-4 you. I think you've won 6 seasons and I've won 4 seasons for accurate predictions, but I could be wrong on that one. But since that's what I think it is, and since I think you are leading the prediction battle of this decades-long rivalry we've had, rivaled only by Brady versus Manning, I will give you the first pick of the 2024 season. Clearly an important game here. Patriots versus Panthers. Who you got?
So, all the beer on the table for this one. I think that this is just going to be a silly game where the Patriots rushing attack looks pretty mediocre behind a rotating cast on offense, where the defense, even though they're all second string here, is still really good. And this is going to be a low-scoring preseason game that, as nerds, will be like, wasn't that fun? But to the average person, they'd be like, why did you watch that? And I feel like I'll watch it and be like, well, did you see who just was the second string tackle on that one? This was like very revealing. But at the end of the day, it's going to be like a 13-9 Patriots win.
Oh, 13-9, a real barn burner. Well, Rich, I will counter that by saying, honestly, if you're watching any preseason football, you're already a nerd. Hand up, I'm going to be watching, but it takes a certain kind of mania to spend a beautiful summer evening watching a bunch of backups playing a bunch of other backups for 3 hours, all the way to the end. It's not like I watch till the halftime when the starters. I watch the entire thing. I will be there till the bitter end of it, and I hope it's not 13-9. But it very well could be, because the Panthers are probably not going to score all that much, and the Patriots haven't scored a lot of points in a very long time. That said, I did say that I would like to see Terrell Jennings go for like 75 yards and 2 scores. So that's at least 14 points for New England. I want to see at least one Joe Milton to Tyquan Thornton go route. So that's 1 more touchdown for New England. And I'm going to add 2 more field goals. So that's 27 points for the Patriots. Whoa. I'm going to say 27-13 New England on this one, for absolutely no reason besides every once in a while you'll get these weird blowouts where things happen. It would have to be based on some, he busts one or somebody has a long bomb. Otherwise, your score is probably more realistic. But I'd like to hope that it's going to be at least one kind of breakout run, and that Milton to Thornton connection, if I manifest it, it's going to happen. So Patriots 27, Panthers 13 for a 1-0 start to the preseason for New England.
Totally. Well, we'll break this down afterwards. Hopefully you're right. I would love to have the offense be a little bit more productive. Wilder's here to say hello. But until next time, Alec, you have a good one.
You too, buddy. See you.
Later, man.